Good morning and welcome to Friday's OTB AM. It's just gone 7:45. We're delighted to have you alongside us. Adrian with you on a Friday as always, and Owen Shane. Very good morning to you, Owen.
Morning, Adrian. How are things?
Things are good. I'm feeling particularly chilled out actually this morning. The taxi driver on the way in had a whole bunch of panpipe music going on, which has me in it's set me up for a real sort of mellow morning.
What is a panpipe?
It's the, you know, that sort of a, you've never heard of a panpipe? It's like a musical wind instrument that you play a little bit like a harmonica, except for you play down into it, and it's got various lengths of pipes that create different sounds.
I know the one you're talking about now. That's
when you'd have been doing your meditation out in the Dingle Peninsula, that sort of music would be gone into the background.
Yeah, it's like Owen Wilson in Meet the Fockers, where he just takes out a panpipe and starts playing it in the middle of the wedding.
I think that's it.
Yeah, that is very relaxing actually.
It's difficult to get out of a mellow humour after it, I have to say. It was a very good start today. Normally it's like some sort of, you know yourself, when you get a taxi driver, you can be opening yourself up for all sorts of things.
I was wondering why you came into the office this morning, rolled out a carpet and just lied down completely horizontal for a couple of hours.
That's just every morning, Owen, you know that.
It really is.
We've a busy show coming up for you over the next hour and a little bit. Here's a bit of a flavour of what's on the menu over the course of the morning. We're going to get into the back pages very shortly, let you know what's going on. It's really only one topic dominating those over the course of the day. We've also, by the way, been talking quite a bit about that topic over the last 48 hours or thereabouts, a little bit more maybe. Martin O'Neill's potential departure to Stoke has kind of dominated things, as it did off the ball on News Talk last night. There was a lot of conversation about it, and there was really a cast of thousands as well, it has to be said, that were contributing to it. Shay Given was on, Guillaume Balliget was on, Liam Lawrence was even on. I mean, this was really, we really sort of went through it last night. But not everybody was overly enthused. Shay Given was on as well to talk about it, but not everybody was overly enthused. We can take a look at one tweeter particularly from the show last night that was not overly enamoured by the fact that we were indulging in the biggest topic of the day. Here we go. Sean's why did you spend so much time discussing Martin O'Neill? It was very boring, and I don't think too many people care. I mean, you know, it's huge. This is a huge topic. This is the manager of the Republic of Ireland, the national football team, as if it needs saying, and there's the potential that he might be about to leave to a Premier League club. It was already a fairly divisive topic, Martin O'Neill's ongoing tenure at Ireland, but the fact that he's interested in a Republic in a Premier League team, and also the fact that we're a sports show, it might crop up.
Good point. Until you made those points, I was agreeing with Sean there, until I realised that this is the biggest sport in the world, until I realised that the national football team is probably the biggest common ground for interest for the listeners of a national sports radio programme, until I realised that this is a very interesting story politically, until I realised that Martin O'Neill is a divisive figure in himself when it comes to the people of Ireland and football fans. I was agreeing with him, but now I'm on your side, I think.
I recommend that Sean's tunes out if he's tuned in this morning for the next hour and a bit, because there's going to be quite a bit of Martin O'Neill chat. There's lots of stuff to talk about, including, and we'll talk to Kevin Kilbane about it in a bit, but Quique Sanchez-Flores, this was the next sort of step in this entire story, that he was managing last night as his Espanyol team had a win last night, and so he was out afterwards, and here he was talking about it. So not quite, it's hard to know. You can get your own read on this, but I don't want to talk about me to enjoy these moments. It was after the win last night. I want to continue being happy with my profession. I'm very grateful to Espanyol. I've been frustrated sometimes because we haven't advanced as fast as desired, but that's because Espanyol haven't been able to, not because they haven't wanted to. Right now, we're not thinking about anything other than today's game and Saturday's match. So that was kind of, there's like the thing that you kind of take out of me. There's a bit of past tense talk there. I'm very grateful. I've been frustrated. There's been a bit of maybe past tense talk, but at the same time, it's not an exactly I'm done here quote from Flores.
Chatting about this weekend would suggest that there might be a bit of a future for him at the club. Emmett Malone's writing today, he touches on the fact that the club haven't had the ambition required for Flores to take them forward, and it seems that both parties are on an equal footing that way. They're kind of happy. There's a mutual agreement there that, right, we're a mid to low table team in La Liga, and that's where we're going to stay. There will never be the opportunity to push on. Now, if that's the persona that Flores inhabits, is he going to get that pushing on nature at Stoke City? I'm not so sure. Well, 3 9th place finishes in a row for Mark Hughes. Certainly to replicate that would take some sort of ambition in the current financial climate in the Premier League. So maybe there is. But it certainly seems if that's your if that's what you live your career by, that teams should be showing top level ambition, then I'm not sure if Stoke City is the place to go. So I'm not sure if that quote necessarily says, right, done deal, if he's number one guy for Stoke, he's getting the job.
A lot of people were split about Martin O'Neill, right? Before the Stoke thing ever came up, there was the camp that sat in the Martin O'Neill is not playing attractive football, and yes, he did manage to get us to a major championship and to the playoff on the brink of another one, but actually, do you know what, his time here is probably done. And then there was another camp who were like, look, he got us to a major championships, got us to the brink of another one, that's just fine, that's as much as we can expect. So the country was pretty much split about it before this, but it's been interesting to read over the last couple of days the notion that Martin O'Neill is now a busted flush, because my reading of it is people are saying he's a busted flush, he's a lame duck manager with Ireland if he does end up coming back, because he's, you know, run the flag up the pole, as it were, for Stoke City and said, listen, I'm interested in this gig. I kind of feel the exact opposite about it, that I think that a Premier League club is interested in the Republic of Ireland manager. That sort of legitimises him a little bit in so much as it is. And also, even from a player's point of view, because that's a huge consideration in this entire thing, suddenly they're like, well, actually there's a Premier League club who, and they're not, most of our players are not playing at Manchester City or Manchester United or the top clubs in England. So like Stoke City is not a bad club to be linked with necessarily. And I actually think it sort of endorses him.
Yeah, I agree to that regard. I think for people who are very interested in interesting political situations, Martin O'Neill staying as manager of the Republic of Ireland would be the most interesting situation. It'll be very interesting to see how that thing plays out and what actually happened. That this is the situation that the whole that the national team's managerial post is in. The whole thing though about running the flag up the pole and being interested, there is an element of you've given your word to the FAI and now you're going to Stoke. Like, do you not buy that argument that there is something untoward about that?
I would totally accept that, because actually that was the whole premise of the previous deal, that I've given my word, so I'm definitely going to go and sign the deal. But think about it this way, let's say he had gone and signed the contract, right? So let's say he had put pen to paper, and like, you could easily assume that like the FAI were very, O'Neill himself said that time when he came out and said, I've agreed to a new deal with the FAI. I've yet to sign it, obviously, but it seemed at that point like the FAI were very keen to have him. So you'd have to assume that remains the case, and the FAI would have been very keen for him to sign the deal, which of course he hasn't done. But let's say he had done, he probably still would have had that conversation with Stoke.
Probably.
And he wouldn't have been wrong to do that, I think.
Is there a little bit more of kind of skullduggery about not signing something and then going elsewhere, and that people might view the lack of putting pen to paper as a calculated move, maybe? I don't know.
I mean, on a very base fact, it would have been a good thing for the FAI to have done, because it would have meant they would have been legitimately entitled to compensation for him. I mean, I think that's the only thing, really.
There might be more going on here that we don't know. It seems very simplistic that it's a contract was forgotten to be signed. That's not the case.
Yeah.
There has to be something more here, that this has happened twice, that maybe Martin O'Neill's just an old-fashioned guy, maybe he's just old school.
That's the way he operates. He's done that at a lot of clubs he's been at. He hasn't signed contracts. And like, I mean, from an FAI point of view, contract negotiations are a tricky thing. So like, it's not a matter of the FAI going in and saying, right, Martin O'Neill, you've got to sign this contract, sign it now or we're done. Like, that would be crazy stuff.
Well, that's the thing.
If they wanted him to make those demands of him, would actually be quite unreasonable if they really wanted him.
Yeah, it's true, and maybe they have such a good relationship with Martin O'Neill that it's like, it's fine, we've got a mutual trust here. And as you say, maybe the case is that, sure, a contract in football these days, what does that actually mean? Like, especially if Martin O'Neill is going to leave if you're going to leave your job, Martin O'Neill, as the national coach, as the Republic of Ireland manager, you will go to a Premier League most likely. Can a Premier League afford to pay out whatever compensation is required in your Republic of Ireland contract? Of course they can. So really, like, how important is a contract really? So I do understand that argument. Whether or not that's the case, obviously we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, look, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few days. Keep your comments coming in about that. It does dominate the back pages this morning. Alex Football 98 on YouTube wondering if would you take Stephen Kenny as Irish manager? Certainly one of the names that's been floated about over the last 24 hours. Lots of other names in the mix as well. Do let us know what your thoughts on the entire situation is. It's 5 to 8 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you along with us. There's a whole bunch of stuff coming up on the show this morning, including a lot of all that Martin O'Neill chat. We do want to let you know as well that we have a pair of tickets to give away this morning in the show. It's for all you rugby fans out there. Get in contact with us on hashtag OTB AM. It's for Leinster's Champions Cup tie against Glasgow, which is at the RDS on Sunday at 1 o'clock. And to be able the chance of winning, you just share the show and tell us who you're going to be bringing. So share the show, tag a mate who you're going to bring along with you, and we're going to announce the winner before 9 o'clock. So that is this morning's competition for you. We've also a poll running for you on Twitter this morning. We're all over it. I mean, it's Friday morning, but we are not winding down here in OTB AM. We've an off-the-ball Twitter poll running for the next hour. Will you be relieved or disappointed if Martin O'Neill stays? It's as simple as that.
There are your only two options. You can't have a third emotion in this thing. It will either have to be relief or disappointment.
Yeah. So that's how we stand this morning. I think we're going to take a look at the back pages on. And
yeah, you'll never guess what's dominating the agenda. I'm going to rattle through these because it's the same story everywhere, really. Stoke setting sights firmly on Flores with O'Neill as a fallback. That's Emmett Malone's story there, focusing on the angle of Martin O'Neill and how he might react to being a second choice option at Stoke City. On the Times Ireland edition, Ireland face weekend wait over O'Neill, reads John Fallon's story. A picture there of O'Neill saying that he's been in talks with Stoke for the past 2 days, but the Premier League club obviously eyeing up Quique Sanchez-Flores at this point. FAI in O'Neill waiting game, reads the back of the Irish Independent. That's Dan MacDonald's story. Manager's future up in the air as Stoke wait on verdict of Sanchez-Flores. There's a couple of other interesting ones there. The Dubs and Abbottstown and Jean Klein. We'll get to those in just a moment. Whereas in the Irish Examiner, the next step is the pretty impactful headline on the front of the Irish Examiner sports section. Has Martin O'Neill passed the point of no return with Ireland? They query.
Good photograph, that too.
Absolutely. That answer will become clear over the next couple of days. While on the back of the Irish Daily Mail, O'Neill D-Day is the headline. Ireland boss's fate hanging in the balance, says Philip Quinn. You do suspect that D-Day is today, that we will have a clearer picture by this afternoon. On the back of the Sun, contract killer is the headline. O'Neill, Stoke City tug of war and compo fear for FAI. That's Owen Cowser there talking about obviously this presumed lack of contract that exists and how the FAI will be a little bit disappointed with not getting compensation for O'Neill if he does go to Stoke. And on the front of the Herald Sports section, Time's Up, they ask, as Martin O'Neill awaits a decision on his bid to become Stoke manager, Aidan Fitzmaurice asks if his position as Ireland boss has already been compromised, which of course is an angle we're going to be focusing on in a couple of minutes with Kevin.
Yeah, I have to say I'm very firmly in the it hasn't been, it's been endorsed by this entire thing. The back page of the Irish Daily Mirror this morning here, it's United £124 million hijack, an exclusive here according to Simon Mullock. That also appears in a bunch of other papers, including The Guardian, who I think were the first paper to break the story yesterday. But this is the sort of without the airport version of Dimitar Berbatov arriving in Manchester. And which club exactly is he going to go to? So can Jose Mourinho work his charm? We shall find out. Rich puts the boot into FAI mess. This is the comments of Richard Dunn on Off the Ball last night, talking about the future for the Ireland manager. And also just an interesting one up here, warring bosses get taste for French feud. So it seems as if PSG have their eyes on a new manager, or potentially one of two. And it's Mourinho and Conte in the shake-up for that. Interesting in the context of their spat that's going on elsewhere. The front page of the Guardian sports section this morning, United step in with £25 million bid for Sanchez. That is again,
they robbed the exclusive.
More reports from the Mirror.
An exclusive which I read on the Guardian website yesterday afternoon. Weird, isn't it?
Looks to scupper City deal and sign Chile forward from Arsenal. Also an interesting one down the bottom here. Froome feels the heat as rider who left Tour condemns inhaler use. This was Tim Vellens, who says inhaler use, it turns out, is not a good thing. He refused to use salbutamol inhaler, which is routinely used by Froome and other cyclists. He was told that it could improve his breathing capacity, funny this, by 7 to 8%.
Marginal gains, that should be dispelled by Team Sky, because it's not marginal, it's a bloody huge gain, and Team Sky should get rid of that stuff immediately. And
fair play to him for refusing to take it, by the way. He is absolutely the unicorn by all accounts. You don't hear those stories so much of active cyclists in the Tour de France deciding not to use something that they could get an exemption for that would be of benefit.
Yeah, I certainly would be going after the TUE.
Mourinho wish list. It's kind of the panpipes, the opposite of the panpipes is on. That's what we need here in OTB AM. The Telegraph this morning, Mourinho wish list, United target Sanchez, Vardy, and I think kind of bizarrely Javier Hernandez in a shock move. It certainly will be a shock move if the little P were to go back. And we also have the Irish news for you this morning. We can take a look here. Eugene McVerry returns for Armagh here. Sanchez Flores as well for the Stoke job. That's the Irish news this morning. And one final one here from the Racing Post this morning. Clonmel drama as fog causes horse to be left at the start. This is, I mean, not that humorous for the starter at yesterday's meet at Clonmel, but Justin O'Hanlon here is an interesting line off the top. It's easy enough to leave home without your keys or your phone. We've all done that. I do it fairly regularly. But spare a thought for starter Paddy Graffin, who started a race without one of the horses at murky Clonmel yesterday. It was a heavy fog that came down seemingly right across the country. Divine Star, 80 to 1 shot. So, I mean, let's face it, Divine Star was not exactly in the running here to win this thing. Went down to the start with the other runners, but was not with the field as they came into the line due to the blanket of fog. Graffin was unable to see Divine Star, cantering back to join the rest of the runners. So everybody took off without Divine Star.
Do bookmakers give a money back guarantee on horses that are lost in fog? I'm assuming
you probably would. And at 80 to 1, it's like, who's got money on at 80 to 1 anyway? There's not very much going down there, I wouldn't think.
Well, you might be surprised at a meeting like that. What could happen? Any 80 to 1 shot could win anything.
You never know. The comments have been coming in and keep them coming in on Martin O'Neill, hashtag OTB AM, or leave them here on our Facebook page or on YouTube or all of that good stuff. So we mentioned there were some stories on the back pages this morning that caught our interest. Here's a little bit of a flavour of them for you before we get into exactly the meat and drink of them. We can give you that look, I think. No, yeah. So Martin O'Neill is the big story across the back pages this morning. Some more of that in just a second. Sanchez to man who is the very creative line this morning. Dublin gear, as reported by Colm Keys, I think at the back page of the Irish Independent this morning.
Gear bags, equipment. Absolutely. Dublin equipment is probably what we should say.
And Jean Outline, it may well end up being over the next couple of years as the Munster forward decides that he would, of course, like to play for Ireland if that opportunity arose. So we mentioned, look, there's a lot of conversation about Martin O'Neill in the newspapers this morning. A flavour of some of your interaction so far. Rory Donoghue says, Martin O'Neill, zzz, as in he's asleep.
It's amazing that he's able to tweet.
I don't know how to read that. Is it he doesn't want to hear about Martin O'Neill, he's had enough of the story, or Martin O'Neill is a boring manager that he's had enough of and would like to be rid of?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest.
You might clarify that, Rory, if you want, and feel free to get in touch with us again. He is asleep. It's early on a Friday morning. He's allowed to be. Declan Healy says the best thing about the Martin O'Neill Furore is that it's distracted from and we don't have to talk about crap January transfers.
Good point. This has actually been a nice accelerator of the January press cycle.
Yeah, we are managing to do both, mind you.
It is
like
true.
The crap January, I mean, Chicharito's not going back to Manchester United, let's face it. That's
true.
Not a thing that's happening.
It has been one of the most eventful second weeks in January ever, as in usually this period between the FA Cup and the Premier League, it's like, nobody cares about Premier League anymore, FA Cup's third round.
That's great.
But you've got Conte versus Jose, you've got this potential hijack of the Alexis Sanchez transfer, and then you've got the mother of all stories for us here in Ireland, which is Martin O'Neill.
Yeah.
Which is,
and then if he does end up going, we've got the great speculation about who's going to be the next man in.
Exactly, yeah. So, well, even if he does,
gift that keeps on giving.
No matter how this situation plays out, it will be a gift that does indeed keep delivering to us.
As in, if he stays the constant sort of, is he a lame duck manager?
Exactly.
I just think it's bullshit. I really just think it's like.
And we'll ask Kevin about that in a
somebody
second.
who actually, a proper football man, we can get his thoughts on it. That's what you're saying. Kevin Kane has been in touch as well this morning. Morning, Kevin. He says, surely the Irish players have heard the strong rumours. I haven't heard one player say they'd love O'Neill to stay. Time for a change and give young players like Rice, Cullen, Cunningham, O'Dowd, Byrne, etc. a year's worth of experience before the next competitive campaign. Like, I think there's a whole bunch of stuff in that actually, and I'm not sure at that juncture of a fairly precarious contract negotiation for Martin O'Neill, any of the players coming out and saying, we love Martin O'Neill, we'd love him to stay, is really a thing that happens for anybody. I mean, the idea of giving youth their chance, I mean, that would probably happen anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin O'Neill has handed out tons of debuts. Yeah. Well, as some people would say, he should have handed out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the Declan Rice thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe with Cunningham, there is a shout there that somebody else might be more receptive to giving Cunningham a run out. I think 2018 is the year a lot of people get first caps, and Rice absolutely has to. If Martin O'Neill stays and doesn't give him a cap, then there's definitely a point in that text.
Right, Shanzer is probably still with us, so we'll move off Martin O'Neill, albeit very briefly, and I'm sure we'll come back to it again. As Owen said, Kevin Kilbane is going to join us if we can get him out of the bed in the next 5 or 10 minutes or thereabouts, and he's going to chat to us about all of that good stuff. But there were a couple of other stories that we wanted to get to, including the Dublin gear story, as so brilliantly named by Tommy there this morning. It's Colin Keys in the back page of the Irish Independent writing about Dublin have given a bunch of gym gear to the National Development Centre in Abbottstown, and Colin Keys says he's not sure exactly why this has come about, but they've decided to remove all of the gear from that Centre of Excellence. He says that maybe they hadn't been satisfied with their access times that some of their squads and players were getting to it. That's sort of fair enough. If Dublin have invested in a bunch of gear, they've given it to the National Development, the GA's National Development Centre, which is in Dublin, which in itself, like the whole idea of it being a national Centre of Excellence, is a difficult one to get your head around, because like the ease of access to a national Centre of Excellence for teams like Galway, for example, or Donegal or Kerry or Waterford. I mean, some of those counties obviously already have their own centres of excellence, but it is very much a facility for Dublin to use. Anyway, they've put their gear in, they're not getting access, so they've packed it up and they said, we're out of here.
You can hardly blame them, really.
Fair enough.
Why did it come to a solution where Dublin will be the ones paying for gym equipment for a national centre, I wonder? Yeah,
probably because it was like, oh, who's going to use this? Well, Dublin are probably going to get a good bit of use out of it. And then, you know, we had John Costello's report a few weeks ago, his annual report, which was entertaining in many ways. But one of the things was he was talking about the really shitty circumstances they have to train in. Outside of, he didn't, I don't think, mention their access to the National Centre of Excellence here.
But like, just on your point there about nobody else gets access to it, who's now using it that Dublin have moved out and there's a little bit more space there? I suspect there might be a blank hall there. At least Dublin were getting use out of it. At least the thing was being used.
Yeah.
And I don't want to feel all righteous on behalf of Dublin here, because it makes me feel sick.
Go for it, Owen. Go for it.
I think there will be a little bit of screw the Dubs. You know, they're grand out themselves. They don't need anything more. They don't need this space. But do you know what? If there's a space in their own county which is available to them and they pay for their own bloody equipment, go ahead and use it. The fact that it's now being kind of done, I don't know what's happened here that they haven't been granted access to it. I'm not sure it's detailed in the story. It seems like the details are like they aren't exactly clear at the moment as to what the people who are running the GAA, obviously, what have they done here that they've kind of shoehorned this equipment away from Dublin?
The GAA entered into an agreement to fund and procure high specification equipment for the floor space available. The GAA insisted that such an offer, which was made by Dublin on the basis that the facility would be located within their reach, would not give the county proprietary claims. So, as in, they could come and use the facility, but they obviously weren't entitled to any proprietary claims over it. But I don't know. I actually wonder what the stated aim of, in terms of the use of the centre, actually is. Like, is it that all counties would at some point come and make use of it? Because, I mean, just logistically, it's kind of difficult.
Very much so.
Likely.
You would like to think that would Meath, Kildare maybe get use out of it in terms of training camps, as in like...
Possibly, yeah.
Fergus Connolly obviously was in yesterday and he was chatting about the way he got rid of warm weather training camps going abroad. Not
getting rid of foreign weather.
The sun exists where no matter what country you go to.
He is a man of magic.
I'm not sure if you knew that, but he's got rid of warm weather training camps because they've got so many different options within Dublin to use. And it's like, yeah, that actually kind of makes a little bit of sense. You've got the freshness of going to Abbottstown or going to wherever you may go for the training, and it freshens things up in that regard without having to change your routine too much. For Dublin or for Meath, Kildare, anybody in Leinster really, maybe a weekend in Abbottstown mightn't be the worst shout. If the GAA would grant them that, I'm sure the GAA would be open to that. Obviously, getting a busload of people and booking accommodation and all that is a thing.
Well, again, that's the thing. And if you're coming up for the weekend, I mean, you might as well be going off to Tenerife or wherever they go.
But with Meath and Kildare, you could do it on a day basis. You could do a day trip for sure. For other counties, obviously, it would take a day trip. I'm getting very big into the logistics here, but I'm not sure it's completely out of scope. Like, where else are you going to locate it? Are you going to put it in Athlone because it's in the middle of Ireland?
That's a fantastic suggestion, and that's exactly what they should do.
Yeah, well, there you go. Logistics, man.
So the other story that from the end of the Cotter Eye this morning, Klein, I want to play for Ireland. It's in a bunch of the papers this morning. This is John Klein, the Munster forward, saying that he joined Munster in 2018, would be eligible at some point over the next 12 months, certainly pre-World Cup, and that the potential that he might play for Ireland. An interesting prospect, like a big, as Rory O'Connor described him here, a powerhouse of a player. looking at the competition, I mean, Donnacha Ryan is obviously a player that's gone, and that obviously creates a bit of a gap. But Devin Toner, Ian Henderson, Ultan Dillane and James Ryan, who is a huge prospect at Leinster, we're not badly covered actually in that area, barring any injuries over the next 18 months.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected this to happen pre-November. Like having somebody of James Ryan's quality just not spring up out of the blue. Anybody who knows Leinster will have seen this guy coming for a long time, and I know Alan Quinlan would have mentioned him for a while as well. But certainly to people who pay small attention to the team, it's like Henderson and Devin Toner, and that's it. We've got two locks, and that's it. We don't have any other player who could reach world-class level. Suddenly James Ryan comes along and can reach world-class level. Ultan Dillane, how is his progress going? We're not sure. We're not sure if being a Connacht is the best thing for him, if he's playing with the best people, not playing Champions Cup is what I mean by that. If he's not playing at a high European level,
fair point,
that might be...
It hasn't overly hindered him up to this point, and they had been playing Champions Cup for a period at that time too when he was in. But
it's also the whole idea of coverage, I suppose, that we don't see as much of Ultan Dillane in the big European days. Like, I didn't watch their last doubleheader against Brive,
that's
for example.
on you, Owen. I'm assuming that Joe Schmidt and his coaching ticket are all over that stuff.
But a factor in that is, how do you perform in the Aviva when you're 12 points down against Exeter Chiefs? That is a big weighting, as opposed to how do you perform when you're 30 points up against Brive in the sports ground. Like that is definitely a factor there. And I know that kind of sounds like just a targeting of Ultan Dillane there. Dillane is obviously going to be in the 2019 squad. He's obviously got the potential to push himself into a starting spot there. So we are well covered. But then Jean Klein is a brilliant player as well. And it comes back to this idea when you're looking at starting players within the provinces. Do you start the young Irish guy who might make it to the national team, or do you start a project player? Well, suddenly the project player is an Ireland player if he's around next year, and that question is taken out of the equation entirely.
Yeah, so I don't know what age he is either will be another factor in that. Like, I mean, if James Ryan's obviously a young guy, and he's been, like, I know Frano had written a piece about him at one point saying that he's the Nathan Hines. Klein is 24, so yeah, he's still a young guy.
Basically, we've got 5 locks that are of very good quality. And when was the last time we had 5 locks of very, very good quality? I'm not so sure. So everything is just looking worryingly good for the World Cup in 2019. Every position is just getting deeper and deeper. Is
Gerbrand Grobler, he might hang around for a little while. He could...
What are you talking about that story for? That was a story in the summer. What are you talking about it now for?
Oh, sorry, Owen. I really shouldn't be bringing that up. I appreciate that's the media.
Shame on all of us for talking about that this week.
The media added again. I think we had one more story. Was that it?
I'm not sure. There was a graphic on screen a while ago which has now disappeared.
Absolutely.
I think Martin O'Neill was there, which we'll talk about Kevin in a while. But
all right, Owen had become an internet sensation overnight, which might have been lost on you if you were sort of having a bit of a life yesterday evening. But don't fret, we're going to bring you all of that good stuff in just a minute. But I think before that, if I'm right, Tommy, we're going to hear, it was Owen and Ger making their picks for EA Sports FIFA 18. Controversial moment.
Brian told the base of my midfield, it's radical, but it's just going to work. And so, it's Leo Messi! He gets to go first again! Oh, what a tragedy! My team's the winner!
This draft is absolutely fucked.
Come on! Just pick Ronaldo, be done with it. Okay, see, I know you want Neymar, and I might just pick him to piss you off.
Go for it.
I'm going to pick Suarez. So he's going to bite people. So you pick Neymar. I'm picking Mbappe. I'm not even waiting. I'm just picking Mbappe because we've got a team of tyros.
And then finally, Harry Kane.
I don't think Harry Kane's going to cut it in the big games.
Yeah, well, that's what Ger thought on.
Yeah, well, it didn't turn out so good as a result. We may as well show you the team that was eventually selected here. Here's a picture of my team, which was selected as a result of a draft, which you saw in the video. There we go. So it's Oblak up to Harry Kane there, and you can pick out the players in between. As I need to reiterate here, this was a draft. Ger picked first in the draft and selected, obviously, Lionel Messi because he picked first in the draft. That picture was tweeted last night, and EA Sports, with their 6 million Twitter followers, retweeted it. And we got some pretty high-profile feedback from the likes of David Myler, querying, how can you leave out Lionel Messi? I'm sure he was only joking. The reason why it was a joke is because I got a barrage of abuse from 12-year-old prepubescent boys who attacked me for leaving out Lionel Messi in my team. It felt like that scene in Elf when Will Ferrell is being attacked by snowballs from kids left, right and centre, and he just has to respond with a barrage of snowballs himself. Well, I feel like I've been hit with snowballs everywhere. Have a look at this tweet, for example. He was questioning our knowledge here on OTB AM. He was saying, Ireland's Sports Breakfast Show, take out the sport. You have zero clue about sports. This is the dumbest TOTY Team of the Year vote I've ever seen.
Fair point.
So I responded to him and I was like, asked him who refereed the 2010 Leinster football final just to see who actually does know about sport. So I wait for the response from Moritz there to see exactly how much he does know about sport. In at number, this is a top 5 by the way, it's the top 5 tweets I received yesterday.
Good, yeah.
So that was number 5. In at number 4 is one of the most bizarre tweets I've ever been sent. WTF is this? Verratti, Dybala, where is Messi? You see less football than my mother. Lau Stalgas, was that like a self-deprecating your mother joke? I'm not quite sure what that was, but certainly a very strange one. In at number 3 was an attack on my hipsterism. I don't really watch football and only know mainstream names. Starter Pack says, is he official? If you hover over his name, he has got a bio that says, I am Zlatan, and a cover photo of Paul Pogba. So yes, mainstream football indeed. Screw mainstream. Number 2 is a user who spat so much fire, I actually just had to go and correct him. So he says, dumbest TOTY picks ever, not meta at all. Do you even play FIFA? And I told him my age and that my mom told me to stop. And so why do you get a vote? Wasted. And I correctly pointed out that my opinions on football are always excellent and correct. And he replied, obviously not. Why is Verratti in there, you then, over Kante, De Bruyne and any of the 3 back-to-back Champions League winning Madrid players? Verratti is shit in game also. So, you know, F all, dickhead. Thank you very much, Guapstar, cyberbullying me there. And number 1, it was very hard to compile this.
Well, there was a lot of them.
In at number 1 was clearly Troops embodying a 12-year-old boy named Ross Edwards. Is you effing dense blood? That is the worst TOTY pick I've ever seen. Really, get into me there, Ross Edwards, getting in under my skin. Just a flavour there.
That's a phenomenal amount of abuse.
Absolute barrage of kids destroying me.
The thing I enjoyed most about it was how much you actually enjoyed the entire thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a harrowing experience.
You were reverse trolling them.
Yeah, I was being serious.
Your GA response to Moritz there.
No, it was serious. My footballing opinions are always correct and totally right, as I pointed out to the other person. That was not trolling them at all. Kevin,
did you see that Team of the Year selection? We're not hearing your amazing thoughts there, Kevin, so we're going to have to try and get that fixed. We want to get the, real football man's reflections on this. You're giving out about the...
I think he was trolling us.
12-year-olds.
He was just miming.
Yeah. Right, we're going to get that fixed and come back to you in just a minute. But before all of that, let's give you a bit of a flavour of what happened on the show last night. Sticking on the Martin O'Neill theme, we were speaking about it on the radio last night. So here's a bit of a flavour of what Richard Dunn had to say about the scenario.
Are the players looking at this wondering what the hell's going on?
Yeah, definitely. I think as soon as he gets linked and it looks like, well, he wants the job, as a player you would just imagine, well, he's gone now, I wonder who the next manager is. So for him to then come back, you're like, well, yeah, what is going on here? But it's a situation that the FAI have almost put themselves in, because they need to clarify this rather than just saying, yeah, we shook hands on something, we'll sign the deal and then that's it. And then if he wants to go, they get compensation or whatever. But there's no... there doesn't seem to be any sort of leadership at the moment. Either way, nobody knows, is he coming alone or whatever, and then it's a difficult one for him to come back into. I think, well, if he set his mind out that he wants to leave and he wants to get another job, are the FAI then happy to play second fiddle and just be, oh, well, I didn't get that, so yeah, I'll stay with you? So I'm sure they'll have to have some strong conversations and try and sort it out between themselves, because at the moment it's looking like a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it really does feel, Dan, as though we're going to need to see and hear some leadership from the FAI over the coming days as to how this has played out over the last couple of months. And as we say, like, maybe they were completely taken aback by what happened over the last couple of days, but certainly for John Delaney to come out and explain how they ended up in a position where Martin O'Neill had not signed a contract and was free to go and talk to other clubs.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that in some way the FAI will come out and say, well, actually, we had a discussion amongst ourselves and we said if any other opportunities come up, you're free to pursue them. But as I said, that's just hard to really buy when they were so keen to get him to stay in October. Because if you take that approach and say that you were totally comfortable with the situation, then are you saying that you were relaxed about the possibility of losing this manager as well, that you were okay with it? I mean, if you want him desperately to be your manager for your next campaign, then you get what's necessary done to secure that situation, I would have thought. I don't see how you can explain it away afterwards, and it has just created a bit of a story here that could so easily have been, it's a fire that could have been put out some time ago.
Kevin is back with us. Kevin, just to move it on to the Ireland story, and to take on the points that the lads are making there. So it's highly plausible in this entire scenario that, just on the lads' points, that the FAI did want Martin O'Neill to sign this contract. They'd spoken in very glowing terms about him, according to O'Neill himself, when he had come out and made that video a few months back saying that a new agreement was on the table that he had agreed to but yet to sign. It's possible that the FAI really wanted him to sign that, but that he wasn't willing to. And from the FAI's point of view, almost at that stage, what do you do?
Well, I think the problem is it's just the clarity. I think we spoke about it the other day that perhaps one side or another could have made a statement just to give us that clarity onto what's been happening. But this has been ongoing now since that Denmark game. We've brought it up a few times on various shows that we've done. Why hasn't it been signed? So it always leaves it open, particularly when we spoke about it, because the Everton job came about and Sam Allardyce came and went. That was after the Denmark game. Martin O'Neill was supposedly sounded out for that job as well. Again, we don't know. That's only rumour. Don't get me wrong. But this one now, there's certain contact that has been made, and we've had no clarity as to what is actually happening regards the FAI or Martin O'Neill, and that's what just makes the uncertainty and creates this uncertainty. Richard Dunn made a few strong points last night as regards to the fact is, well, where does it leave the FAI now? I think it does leave the FAI in a compromised position going forward. They can come out with a statement, and they can try and redirect it elsewhere to say that yes, we would have allowed him to go somewhere else if that was the option. But I think it doesn't put anyone in great light here. That's the only thing, because of this gentleman's agreement. On that,
Kevin, right? How does it compromise them? So if he's saying he had said all along to the FAI, right? I'm agreeable to take on this contract, and I will at some point take it on, right? Let's assume at some point over the last few weeks that the FAI have been in contact with Martin O'Neill and said, listen, we'd really like you to put pen to paper here. And he said, that's fine, I'll absolutely do that. And then at some point, obviously, the Stoke thing comes up. So that they're not going to say to Martin O'Neill, okay, you haven't yet signed this, sign it now, or we're moving on. I don't think that would have been good business. I think the FAI would have copped all sorts of flack. If a manager they wanted, they'd put that sort of pressure on to the point where he'd have ditched out. So in the meantime, the Stoke gig comes up and he's within his rights to go and speak with them. Just in terms of that point about the FAI being compromised, I can see a fairly plausible scenario. We don't know the details in the background, but I mean, it seems like a plausible scenario that they wanted him to sign and he was just stalling.
No, you're spot on with what you're saying, but where does it leave them with not getting him to sign that contract 2-3 months ago when that contract was supposedly on the table? Why hasn't it been signed so early? And again, it goes back to the original point. I think it was Dan McDonnell made it the other night when he came on the evening show with us, basically saying, well, this was the same scenario ahead of the Euros in 2012. He didn't actually sign his contract till or post Euro till actually after that Serbia game. It just. I'm not saying it's not retrievable, because it is a retrievable situation. I think that is the case, but they are compromised. Of course they are, by not signing that contract 2 or 3 months ago, whenever that was agreed before that Wales game. It's left them open to this sort of scenario, and now all of a sudden it looks as though Martin O'Neill, if we believe what we're reading, then he was keen to actually move on. And I just think then it puts the FBI in a position where they think, well, hang on a minute. Are you committed to us or not? That's the only thing that I'd be thinking about if I was the FAI.
Just on that point of the previous instance where there was some confusion about whether or not a contract was or wasn't signed, that tells me that this is something to do with the relationship with Martin O'Neill specifically, because I don't remember any other manager in the history of the Republic of Ireland's national team that have had these arrangements with contracts where there's a verbal agreement months before the thing is actually signed. So this would suggest that this is more Martin O'Neill than the FAI maybe. Is that fair to say, or am I forgetting some other instances in the past where the FAI have done this with other managers?
No, I don't recall them doing it with the manager. I think you're spot on. It's certainly a Martin O'Neill thing. It's definitely something that he has said on record. It's a verbal agreement. The agreement's in place. The contract will be signed and sealed. And that may be the case. The comeback can always be, there was never any intention for me to leave. It was always going to be that way. But it is definitely Martin O'Neill who has. I'm sure if that contract wanted to be signed, as I said before, 2 months ago by Martin O'Neill, it could have been signed. The ball's totally in his court through this year.
From a player's point of view, Kevin, so there's been some conversation about, he's been linked with Stoke, he's gone and had a conversation with them, and somehow this undermines his position with the Republic of Ireland if it ends up that obviously Flores gets the gig and O'Neill remains on and does eventually. I mean, it's plausible that O'Neill could end up signing that FAI contract next week. It's not an unlikely scenario. So there's been some conversation about his position being undermined by having this conversation with Stoke. I kind of think it might actually be the opposite, that in the players' eyes they're looking at a guy who's been 4 years in the gig, who's done pretty well, it has to be said, in terms of qualification and almost qualification, that actually he's been linked with a half-decent club in the Premier League and it almost endorses him.
Yeah, you know as well as I do, Adrian, how it works. The players won't give a hoot. They're not bothered. The players will not be bothered about Martin O'Neill, whether he were to leave or not. They're literally trying to concentrate on themselves, particularly now at club level. The only thing, and I think I've spoken about it, I think the other night, it's just that little bit of uncertainty. If a new manager were to come in, it's an uncertainty around themselves. Once you become established with a certain manager, is the manager going to pick me going forward? But the players will not be bothered one way or another. They really won't. The only thing, it's maybe from the outsiders looking in, it's how committed Martin O'Neill is. That's the only point I think that it'll be more the supporters that would have the concern. The players won't bother whatsoever.
And isn't that almost the most important point in this entire conversation? Because ultimately it's not going to damage his standing with the team. So ultimately, if he does sign the new thing next week, who cares?
Yeah, that's true. That is true. But I think it'll all be used as a stick to beat him with going forward, though, won't it? That is the thing. How committed were you to this job in the first place? If Martin O'Neill were now to go and sign the contract, which again, it's still highly likely that he will do. This will be brought up, won't it? You know as well as I do how this will work, how this will play out in press conferences. That why then did you go and speak to Stoke? Why then, if you were committed to the Republic of Ireland job, did you go and speak to Stoke at that particular moment? That's the thing that will be used against him, and it'll just create a little bit of edginess. I would say more edginess around press conferences. That's the thing that I can see just happening further down the line. That will be used several times. I mean, it won't be several times, by several maybe journalists at various times throughout the next campaign.
Yeah, but it's kind of a ridiculous argument because he's totally, from his point of view, entitled to go and speak with Stoke, and it demonstrates that a decent club in the Premier League are interested in our manager. That almost legitimises him. I just kind of think I find it a frustrating argument because ultimately it's football, right? What sort of loyalty are we expecting here?
Well, that was maybe the original point. I just think it's the FAI will face the uncomfortable questions here. It won't necessarily be Martin O'Neill can back this off as much as possible. He'll be quite fine about it. And you spot on what you say. This is just the way that the game is. Every single player, and we spoke about it. Players know themselves how the game works. They know that when they go away on international duty, that they're being tapped up by various players' agents. Can you come with me, my agency? Can you come with me? I might be able to get you moved to X or Y club. That's how it works. And no matter what people think and how people think the game is done from the inside, that's exactly how it works. It's not exactly the clearest of business. It is a bit shady at times. That's the way that it works. And I think even John Delaney will know that himself. But I just think the questions that will be asked will be of the FBI, and I think they will just find themselves in an uncomfortable position going forward.
I just want to kind of question that question of legitimacy and legitimising Martin O'Neill being linked with a Premier League job. How does it legitimise him? I know this is kind of challenging your point, Adrian, but Kevin, if you want to just talk about the international management aspect, because Stoke City want him to come in and do a job with the club team. Martin O'Neill has proven he does very, very well with club teams. When he gets a transfer window and buys the players that he wants for his system, he's almost been on the record, I think, in saying that he doesn't have the players with Ireland and therefore has to play this system that has got him so much criticism with the Irish public. I'm not sure if I buy this idea that going to a Premier League club or being linked with a Premier League club actually legitimises him as an international manager.
Well, it legitimises him as a manager. I think, Adrian made the point earlier on, certainly gives him a lot of credence. It shows how highly thought of Martin O'Neill is, certainly within Premier League circles. Legitimise him as an international manager, I think ultimately, I mean, I was watching a little bit of Sky yesterday. I was watching, and the common thread that was coming through is Martin O'Neill has done a great job with the Republic of Ireland. That is the common theme that's coming through. So I don't think, in taking the Irish job, I don't think his reputation has been diminished whatsoever. I think it's been enhanced, certainly on the UK side of the water, and that ultimately has enhanced his reputation within Premier League circles.
That's what I was going to say, that it might be a difference of opinion on this side of the water than it is over there. Just like on a final point on that with regards to the Stoke job, will Martin O'Neill's pride be hurt at all by any chance if this story is true this morning, that Flores is indeed their number one choice and Martin O'Neill is a backup?
Oh, you tell me. Your pride's been hurt overnight, Owen, so I don't know. That's maybe something. No, seriously, I mean...
football, baby.
Well, if it is, I don't know. There's nothing more to say to it than that, Adrian. That's the way that it is. Managers go for jobs. Players know full well when they're contacted by agents, they might be number 2 down the pecking order. If a certain transfer doesn't go through, then they'll be the number 2. They'll be the go-to guy. That's exactly the way that it works. Look at Sam Allardyce. Well, Sam Allardyce's pride hurt when he was number 2 or even number 3 for the Everton job. He bided his time, and that's just the way that it works.
The big other part of the storyline is the number 1 choice, Quique Sanchez-Flores, and he came out after Espanyol's win last night and didn't exactly say that he didn't quite commit to doing one thing or the other. But anyway, we had Guillem Balaguer, the Spanish football writer, on the show last night. Need some things to say about Flores.
Approach halfway through the season, an approach that is, it makes him, put him in a crossroad really, because the target of Espanyol when he first arrived was to get Espanyol into European places and eventually into the Champions League. And he's in target to do that this season in a way, even though some results have been disappointing. So now in the quarterfinals of the Cup, it's becoming a decent season. But he feels that some of the promises that Espanyol gave him when he first arrived with the new ownership that the club has have not been delivered. So he's getting what Espanyol has, but and what they can give him, but not what they promised. Which means that, in a way, it has been a very frustrating 12 months for him. He thought he was coming to a club where he could go and buy some of the players that he wanted. He hasn't been able to do so, and now it's not so much about getting into the top 4 as originally was in the plan. It's more about trying to get to the European League or something like that. But it's not the Espanyol that he wanted. So with that in mind, once Stoke comes with, and it's not about money, but it's about a project that is very exciting. It will be very, very difficult to say no, and Stoke are very hopeful that he will say yes.
Yeah, Guillem Balaguer on the show last night, and so we should see how that pans out. I mean, I think that we could probably expect some sort of developments today. We're talking about the FAI, and I'm actually, one of the questions that interests me the most is if Martin O'Neill is still being paid right now. That's probably because that would actually give them some fight in the we need a bit of compensation if he does end up going.
I doubt it. We don't know. Obviously, we don't know. But if there's no contract on the table, is he still in contract? When did his contract expire?
It's done post the ending of the previous campaign.
So you would suspect not, but it's anybody's guess.
Sorry, I would imagine it would be something in place. If he isn't being paid, it'll probably be backdated when he probably signed the contract. I would imagine that'll be.
Right, we're going to move on from that. We have a couple of comments in. Niall Keegan, yes lads, why would you want rid of your only proven winners in the Ireland setup being O'Neill and Keane? Makes no sense, says Niall Keegan. Players will only improve with the top manager. O'Neill is the best we can get. So there's certainly an element of that. Sam meanwhile says, I don't consider O'Neill to be a lame duck. That said, is there a vast difference in skill between Iceland and Ireland? I'd think not. As the comment disappears off my screen, but they seem to be able to play a much more expansive team-focused game. What gives? Says Sam. Well, we shall find out how that develops over the next while. We have a poll running as well about whether you'd be disappointed or delighted to see Martin O'Neill leave. 64% at the minute say they'd be disappointed if Martin O'Neill stays.
Wow, okay.
So that's the anti-O'Neill.
Well, the other option
vote.
was relieved, not delighted.
Yeah.
So.
Couple of other things, Kevin. This is normally the chicken shit slot that we have. I don't know where the chicken is actually this week. He seems to have
you're not getting your hands on it.
off screen there. I'm not allowed to have him.
Nathan not fancy getting up today?
Nah, he fancied a lying, Kev. These sort of rock stars, start presenting off the ball a couple of nights a week, and suddenly it's pick and choose what they want to do. So just a couple of things before we let you away that we want to get your thoughts on. One of them being VAR, which was introduced during the week. I mean, I only watched the Palace-Brighton game on Monday night, really. I won't lie to you, I only watched it for VAR, just to see was there going to be any sort of a decision. I know that's a sort of a despicable non-football man type of thing to do, Kev, but I ended up getting nothing, as it turned out. There's been a lot of conversation about this week. Chris Hughton was the comment that sort of stood out for me, where he talks about, look, there's not going to be much improvement here. It's only tiny percentages that we're talking about. Why would we bother doing this thing at all? That's actually the stated aim of the entire VAR project, that it would take the current situation is that referees say they get 96% of decisions correct. This would take them to 98%. I don't see much of the downside, I have to say.
No, I'm probably with you. I'm probably with you to an extent. I just don't want the game to be slowed down too much. I think Jamie Redknapp and Thierry Henry were in studio in the Sky studio for the Arsenal or the Chelsea Arsenal game of the night. They were talking about perhaps it can be a little slow in relation to the penalty incident. I think it was Danny Welbeck made a challenge, and in fairness, the game carried on. It was Martin Atkinson. He waited for the corner, and then he took his time in making a decision. I think that is the only thing with slowing down the game. But I'm with you. I think we look at some massive decisions that have gone on over the last few years, and we look at some of them that could have been avoidable, could have been prevented. And I think if it eliminates those real contentious decisions, those real big decisions that can affect championships being won, that could affect tournaments being won, then I think it has to be there. Of course, it has to be there. And I think we only need to look at goal line technology. I think there was a certain element of negativity towards that. It's quick, it's easy. I think it's certainly enhanced the game when goal line technologies come in. So I'm all for it. I think it has to stay, most definitely.
I think it took like a minute and 20 to get that review done the other night, and Conte was on the sideline giving it this one that he was sort of straight away. He was ready. He'd got his hand terminology all ready for action.
We had Alan Kelly on the show the other night, and apparently that's a bookable offence.
Oh, really?
If referees and players give that sign to the officials, then apparently that's a bookable offence. They're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to. Hang
on. So you're allowed to go up to the referee, and like I've seen this a lot actually over recent weeks. It's not been unique to that, but it's really stood out for me, and abuse the referee from an unbelievable height. Like the sort of language that's being used is incredible. But you can't do this.
Yeah, well, apparently that's the thing. You're not allowed to try and influence him by trying to make him go up. Because from what Alan was saying the other night, Alan was saying every single decision is being reviewed over and over again. They're constantly reviewing every single decision that's being made in the lead up to the goals. So if something does come up, then they make the referee aware that something was amiss and something's not quite right. So that is the overriding thing from it, really. The players are not allowed to run to a referee to try and influence them, and the coaches and managers on the touchline are not allowed to either.
Yeah, like the only concern I have for VAR is that like great football men, the likes of Richard Keys, who's been tweeting about it during the week, are just waiting for one mistake. And that's the problem I have, that I think like if there's going to be any small glitch in this thing over the first few weeks and it's a trial period, I think it's just going to end up having a bullet put in it.
Well, did you not do the one thing? I don't know if you did say it, and I mentioned it to Alan the other night. He hadn't actually seen the incident. It was the Turin derby. It was Juventus and Torino. There was in the Coppa Italia last week. It was, I think, or just before the break. There was a massive foul in the build-up to the goal. Clearly see it. The VAR official has said to the referee on the pitch, "Look, there's a big incident here. You need to come and have a look at." So he's gone over to the touchline, and he doesn't make the decision now. This is the one thing I think where it will create that little bit of uncertainty. They're saying it's as you say, it's only a small percentage. Apparently, the decision making it's gone from 98% correct to 96% to 98% correct. So they are still going to get things wrong, yes. But I think a majority of the time, it actually will be right. I think it just will be a bit of a storm when they get one of these decisions wrong. But I think I'm just a little bit concerned about the time. That's the only thing. Why does the referee, for every single incident or any major incident, need to go over to the touchline to have a look? Why can't he trust the VAR officials up in his ear to say to him, look, that was wrong, you need to call that back, there was a foul in the build-up? I think that should be the case, but ultimately, by him going over to the side, I think that then adds another 2 or 3 minutes onto the clock.
I think that's what happened with Atkinson during the week, wasn't it? He stood in the penalty area and he let somebody else review it, and like it was a minute and odd for a hugely significant moment in that game that done it like very clearly said it wasn't a penalty.
I think that was have to do with the fact that the play had moved on a good bit after that, so the VAR got a good head start. So the ball was in play for 90 seconds or thereabouts afterwards, so the VAR had that time. But the constant reviewing is something that they often say we should be doing more of in rugby before they go to the TMO. But it's good to see the VAR start off on the right foot, isn't it? That they're actually getting that process done as things are developing, that the VAR has the wherewithal to actually go and check things out if they think it's suspect.
While play is ongoing, I think that's an absolutely sound point. One other thing we wanted to talk to you, Kev, about Liverpool and the fact that are they a selling club, I guess is the question here. I mean, it's a difficult one because they've bought Philippe Coutinho for I think 8.5 million, and then Barcelona come in for 140 million odd, whatever it is. Like most clubs in the world are going to sell. I mean, if it's Real Madrid or Barcelona themselves, most clubs in the world are going to sell a player for that kind of profit.
Yeah, you only need to look at the best players in the world. Invariably end up at Real Madrid and Barcelona. You only need to look at Cristiano Ronaldo. He was exactly the same. Don't necessarily see it like that. You look at what and how they have improved. Naby Keita, of course, he will be coming in next summer. The money that they spent on him last summer, and Van Dijk coming in now. They have still got a lot of money available to them. Certainly during this transfer window and into the next. I don't think it looks unlikely they'll be able to get some sort of replacement in at such a short with such a short window in this transfer window left now. I think they'll just go ahead for the next window. I think they'll be very strong next year, Liverpool. But ultimately, I mean, I think Liverpool will be strong. Nathan and I are on commentary this weekend, actually for the Liverpool Man City game as well. So I'm looking forward to see how Van Dijk gets on, certainly in this type of game. But ultimately, no. If the big clubs come in and it's a Barcelona, I mean, Graham Souness has touched on this in the past himself. If you're a South American player, Barcelona come calling, you're going to want to go. That's the reality of it. I don't necessarily see Liverpool as a selling club because of that.
Not even enough time to get into Brendan Rodgers' great text that he got from Philippe Coutinho as he was arriving into Barcelona. Kev, we enjoyed your little flashing of the off-the-ball mug there a bit earlier on. Well done.
Yeah, good man. All the best, lads.
He's on brand. He's on brand. Cheers, Kev.
Cheers, lads.
Kevin Kilbane live there from Kevin Kilbane Towers, reflecting all things football. I'm assured that Chicken Chip will be back next week without fail.
I really hope not. I just really thoroughly pray that we'll never return.
There's people that are people are divided about the chicken noise. Some people love it, some people really hate it.
Nobody loves it except
I
you.
love it. A lot of people love it. It's a great sound, you know.
It's a horrible sound.
Bigly, it's a great sound. Right, we're going to talk some rugby very shortly with Gavin Mortimer, who's a rugby writer on all things French rugby ahead of a pretty interesting weekend of Champions Cup action, some of which will be live on Off the Ball on Newstalk. But before all of that, Michael Fennelly, the now former Kilkenny hurler, was on Off the Ball with Nathan last night. He told a great story about what was going on when Nathan spotted himself and Brian Cody chatting at a Kilkenny pub earlier in the summer.
Over the last few months, we've actually started to hear some things about Kilkenny under Brian Cody and quite a few stories of retirement. And one of the things we've learned is that, well, Brian Cody doesn't just generally go for a coffee with his players. It's not that sort of relationship. And I saw the two of you in the corner and said I could go over and say hello, but no. This could be the moment. This could be a special moment. Michael Fennelly, at this stage of his career, this might be the time when you're breaking the news to Brian Cody. Was I onto something?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. That's about end of July, maybe, was it?
End of July, yeah.
Yeah, funny enough, the story behind that is I would text Brian to have a quick chat. Maybe I spoke to an inter-county footballer in Dublin that week. They were on a night out, I think, and something he said just kind of hit home to me with what we have in Kilkenny, maybe I suppose, in the environment and culture and all that we have. And I said that there's still value there in the team, and there's still value obviously with Brian there as well. So I texted him after a few pints of me, I think, saying, would you fancy a coffee or something? And sure, we met Friday anyway. And again, even I wasn't even sure would I be staying on for 2018, even though I didn't even have a chance to think about it, to be honest, because it was just literally about 3 weeks after the Waterford game. But I knew with Brian at the helm, he's the right person for it. He has the right foundations, right culture there, and there's a lot of players. I'm there 12 years now, and anything he says or he does always still feels new and even unique. He might have felt maybe that he's saying the same thing over and over, right. But it was never that way for me or any of the players, I think. So that was important to maybe just say, maybe I think, because obviously we didn't know was he staying on or not, and obviously we had a bunch of new players coming through, which I was aware of, and I think with his presence and his with him there just at the helm, I think is the right person for the right job.
Was it almost then saying thanks to Brian Cody, that you're probably at a stage in your career where you're a bit more open, you're a bit more honest, a bit more confident, that you don't have that conversation of, you mean a bloody lot to us as players.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it probably was saying, exactly said, you mean a lot, and what you're doing is still right. And as I said, it doesn't get old. I'm there 12 years, I'm the oldest on the team, and I still feel that what you have, I still listen, and your talks and that, and what he says, it still feels new and fresh. So, I just felt maybe that he might be thinking that he's there now 20 years maybe, or 19 years of time, and maybe he's saying the same thing over and over, but it's never the case. He's a very powerful speaker, and he can bring in players, and he brings in that spirit, and at times after a speech you could go through 3 or 4 walls for him, that's the kind of presence he has, and that's important. And I think I just wanted to maybe say that and make sure that he was aware of that before he made any decisions on his on his future.
What did the Dublin player say to you about
basically
being special in Kilkenny?
About, I suppose, what we've done, and maybe they're trying to maybe replicate what we've done maybe, and the values that we portray maybe. And he's probably even maybe saying, a few of these lads maybe need to quieten down the media maybe, a few of the former players maybe. So, but he said it's very special what we have, and they looked upon what we had, and they're trying to replicate it. So he's like, God, if one of these best teams in the country are trying to do what we're doing, we're definitely still doing it right.
Yeah.
And we have it. We have the ingredients, we have the foundations, because they're very, very hard to set. It takes years to do that, and so that was important for me maybe just to get that message across to Brian, and that just hit home at the time. I think that I needed to say that maybe, and again, it wasn't me saying was I retiring or not. I wasn't even sure. I wanted to get a good run at the club in terms of the championship that we had going forward, and get myself in a good position, and hopefully hit the league ground running, I suppose, come January, February with myself.
What was Brian's reaction when you have a conversation like that?
That was fine. He probably maybe a bit standoffish, I'd say, maybe in terms of what I had to say and that, but then we had a good open chat about things, and maybe what happened the last few months with the Kilkenny team. Obviously, I only played 2 games, and it was only those 2 weeks really in terms of the Limerick game and the Waterford game. But I just felt we had a lot of injuries that year, to be honest, earlier on in the year. We didn't really get a good chance to get a good pre-season in as well. And there's a lot of maybe distractions and things happening that we just didn't need really, I think. And obviously losing against Wexford obviously wasn't a good start to the year in terms of championship. And that probably set us back a small bit as well. But I said the things were right there, but the injuries did kill us. We never got the whole team together. During the league, there could have been 9 of us in the stand watching the game. I remember going watching Wexford against Kilkenny in Nolan Park, and I'd say there's about 9 of us there. That's unheard of really, So I think we could probably look at those injuries, see why did they happen maybe, and try and not let that happen in 2018.
Yeah, Mick Fennelly there in conversation with Nathan on last night's Off the Ball. You can check out that full piece on offtheball.com. It's just coming up on 10 to 9 on this Friday morning. Delighted to have you with us. Keep your comments coming in. And by the way, there is a competition as well, which we'll tell you about now. A pair of tickets to give away on this morning's show. Hashtag OTB AM for Leinster's Champions Cup game against Glasgow. This coming Sunday game you can hear live on Off the Ball. So we have a pair of tickets to give away. All you got to do is share the feed of the show and tag a mate, whoever you think you might bring along with you, and just do all of that. Hashtag OTB AM, and we'll announce that winner before 9 o'clock, or certainly before the end of the show. Right, we're going to talk rugby now. We're going to get into some conversation about Racing and Munster, of course, at the weekend. Ronan O'Gara and Simon Zebo, big parts of those conversations, the past and the future, of course. Gerbant Grobler as well has been a big talking point this week. 4G pitches, which is the case for Racing's brand new U Stadium, and it's all, of course, to do with the Champions Cup. And to do all of that, I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by rugby writer based in France, Gavin Mortimer. Good morning, Gavin.
Good morning.
Thanks a lot for taking our call. Intrigue everywhere, really, ahead of this Racing Munster game this weekend. One of the pieces of intrigue, it turns out, is not Ronan O'Gara after all. He's made his departure. He's only gone, so maybe not overly felt just yet, but just talk to us a small bit about the loss of O'Gara and what that will mean for Racing.
I think it's going to be a huge loss for Racing. He's been a link in the past between the many English-speaking players and the French coaching duo of Laurent Lebitte and Laurent Travart. Ronan can speak French, and he's sort of helped smooth over the often many little difficulties that face English-speaking players when they move to a French club. And of course his nous, his tactical and his nous on the rugby field, his years of experience, and he's a good guy who's respected and admired by everyone at Racing. So I think it's going to be a big blow. And one also, actually, there's talk today in the French papers that Laurent Lebitte could be joining the French national coaching setup in June. So that's going to be another disruption. So yeah, it's interesting times at Racing when they've just moved into this spanking new stadium.
Yeah, it seems Casey Lalala has taken his gig as well, so we'll see how that pans out, particularly this weekend. Nice rivalry building up between the two of these. It's, however, all very much in Munster's favour over the last couple of years, 3 from 3. Racing did a big number on Claremont in the top 14 at the weekend. Gavin, they're in good form, and I wonder, in terms of their motivation, is it the group standings, which is a very obvious one, or would they be motivated a little by that recent record against Munster?
I think... Yeah, they will be. I mean, Laurent Travers this week, the forwards coach, has talked about, it's a knockout game for them. They know they've got to win it. And that's right, there is the rivalry of, I seem to be going to watch Munster Racing in Paris every season practically in the last few years. And it's always enjoyable matches, and they're quite sort of evenly balanced, I think. And it's going to be very interesting to see on Sunday the difference that this pitch makes. It's I was there in just Friday before Christmas for the official opening against Toulouse, and it's a magnificent stadium. Munster fans are in for a treat. Cushioned seats and bars and restaurants about every 30 metres, and obviously the pitch is artificial, but with the roof, and it doesn't matter what the temperature is outside, and that particular night it was just above zero, but it was 20 degrees inside. What that creates, however, is humidity, and it was, I have to say, it was a dreadful game of rugby, that the official opening game against Toulouse. So many handling errors, but the players spoke afterwards of a slipperiness of the ball because of the humidity in the stadium. So I think that obviously they've had more time to adapt to that now. Racing, Munster, it's going to be interesting to see how they do adapt to that, because it is going to be different from what they're used to.
What's the relationship like at the moment between the Racing fans and Dan Carter? Because it certainly seems to me that a European quest and going deep in this competition could be the seal of approval that Dan Carter needs to go down as, I suppose, not a club legend at Racing, but certainly to kind of match his iconic status. Yeah,
I mean, that's going to be... It's going to be interesting. He really has fallen out of favour with the Racing fans and French fans in general since the announcement that he was going to be leaving. And just there's been a lot of unfavourable comparisons to Johnny Wilkinson, who gave everything for Toulon, was a legend within the French game and spoke the language. And Dan Carter, yes, he's had injuries, but there's also a feeling among Racing fans that really he's sort of he's been going at 50% even when he is being fit. And so I think, that's a weakness. I think that the Munster back row can really target number 10. There is talk in the papers today that Carter will be back from this knee injury. Remy Tallis has been filling in. He's a very journeyman fly half, in my opinion. So it's a weakness in the Racing side. But of course, Dan Carter is a proud man, and he may well want to go out and show people, show his knockers, prove his knockers wrong.
Yeah, he's been posting on Instagram over the last 24 hours, knocking the ball about at training, looking happy, looking fit. Your sense is he starts?
I think he will. Yeah, I think he will start. It's been unfortunate timing, this new stadium. This new stadium it's about a year behind schedule. It was all supposed to coincide with Dan Carter, and he was going to put bums on seats. So I think it's a 30,000 stadium, and he is still an attraction for the French rugby fans, for the floating French rugby fans. So I think he will start, but I think he hasn't played for so long. He's going to be rusty, so it's going to be very interesting. That could be the key area that decides Sunday's clash.
And maybe even that pitch, you've spoken about it already, and reading Ronan O'Gara in the Irish Examiner this morning talking about it, and he was saying that, players are not necessarily going to be flinging themselves about on it, that maybe once the adrenaline gets going it becomes a bit easier, but it's actually a pretty tough pitch to hop around on. Is that going to be a bit of a factor in his decision, given that his injuries, it doesn't appear either way as if it's 100% cleared up?
No, I think that's right. We don't know, and I think Racing are deliberately playing it a little bit cagey to keep Munster guessing. But it will be. That's right. Of course, he's trained on this artificial pitch, but it's a completely different. As I said about the first game against Toulouse, the Racing players afterwards said playing a match it's completely different to training. We've trained in it quite a bit, but I think that will be a factor. And the fact that Remy Tallis has had a couple of games there, and so. Who knows? But I certainly think whether he plays or not, fly half is the area where Racing. Chris Mazzoui, as forwards coach this season, has brought a harder edge up front to the Racing play, but in the backs, particularly at the half-back, is an area where there's a weakness to be exploited.
Yeah, and one of those harder edges is one of the other areas of intrigue, certainly from a Munster point of view, in Donegal Ryan. He's started 4 games. Gavin, interested to know how he's going, because I'm sure Munster fans are going to be keeping a very keen eye on him. They know all about him, how he's going, what sort of form he's in.
Yeah, no, he's been going well, actually, and again, he seems to have adapted quite well to the top 14, and it's sort of his sort of style. It's very physical, and Racing do play. They've come with the criticism, Racing, from opposition fans about the fact that they don't they play a rather forward orientated game, but that's very much to their strengths. And of course, he's alongside Nakawara in the second row, and they've got some seasoned Nyonga in the back row, and some seasoned internationals. And Donegal Ryan, yeah, he's been playing well, and I think obviously he'll bring an insight into the Munster game for Racing, and with Ryan O'Gara too. That could prove very useful, and I think he'll obviously have something to prove against Munster too, and so I think expect a big game from him on Sunday.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the forward-oriented play, because it's not overly dissimilar to Munster and the Munster side, in which a back like Simon Zebo has managed to thrive within. So I'd imagine the Racing fans are pretty excited about Zebo coming over, because he's probably going to be able to provide some excitement regardless of how oriented towards the forwards the team might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a fan of Teddy Thomas, who burst onto the international scene, you may remember, with a wonderful try against Australia in the November 2014 internationals. And this season, actually, he's getting back to that sort of form. And I think with Teddy Thomas and Zebo on the wings, that's going to be wonderful. And I think that Zebo is someone who will enjoy the Racing experience, and particularly playing in this new stadium, which is so different from, as Munster fans will know who've made the trek in the past, to the dreadful old place of the Yves Manoir in the north of Paris, which is, excuse me, but it was a dump, and this is a whole new setup, and so I think it's a good move for Zebo, and I think he's going to be welcomed by the fans. And they're playing now in front of there were 20,000 there on Sunday night, a 9 o'clock kickoff for the Clermont game. I think it will be a 30,000 sellout this weekend, so it's going to be a good move, I think, for Simon Zebo.
As long as you didn't describe it as a shithole, Gavin, it's everything is just fine around here, in Donald Trump type language. So yeah, the Simon Zebo piece, obviously, was there any official release that this? I mean, we had the kind of bizarre interview that he's done with Racing. I'm not sure about the timing of it, but has there been any official confirmation? It's obviously happening.
Yeah, I think it's happening. There hasn't been anything haven't seen anything in the French papers, but I think it's going ahead, and it's as I said, I think it's something that I expect some more big name signings from Racing, because they're looking to with this new stadium, they're going to look to really get some star appeal and turn it into the most formidable club. They won the top 14 two years ago, and since then they've sort of plateaued a little bit. And Jackie Lorenzetti has spoken of his dismay, really, at the way, particularly last season when it was chaotic with these off-field problems. And so I think he's looking to really relaunch them, and Zebo will be very much a part of that.
One of the other things I wanted to get your thoughts on, Gavin, was the story of Geraint Grobler, who potentially was going to make his proper debut for Munster over the weekend, but as it turns out, he's been named in their B team to play in the BNI Cup. I think it might be even this evening. He's a guy who has a bit of a controversial past. He's been banned for doping, essentially. He post that signed for Racing, played there for a season, and then joined Munster. There's been a huge fuss about it this week. It kind of went under the radar a small bit when he actually signed initially, in terms of his past, because I think it was during the Lions tests, so it kind of went unnoticed almost a small bit. But there's been a fairly big fuss about it this week. Was there any talk about it? You've been based in France for a number of years. Was there any talk about it when he signed for Racing, about this guy's past, or about any unease, I guess, from a rugby fraternity point of
last season, and he's a charming man, and he was very honest about the doping ban, and he said he was at a very low point. He'd had a succession of injuries, and someone said to him, "Look, this will help you." And he said, "I was young, and it was a mistake, and I've served my time, and it won't happen again. And I can only apologise for letting down everyone, who knows me, rugby, etc." So he's saying all the right things. And I think, he has served his time, and it did cause some discussion in the French press, but he sort of certainly... the way he played for Racing, he's very athletic. When he's fit, he's a very good rugby player. Great hands, great vision, just intelligent rugby player. Personally, he was banned. He's the authorities hit him with the ban. He served it. He's back, and I think he deserves a second chance. And it's unfortunate, this situation at Munster where he hasn't been able to play. But I think when he is fit, he will bring a real dynamism to the Munster pack.
Do you not think that it's a bit strange that the IRFU or potentially even people at Racing might be able to give this guy a free pass? Obviously, you've spoken to him, you might know him a little bit more than we do, and you might be able to speak up for his character, but ultimately character doesn't matter here. He's a guy who took an anabolic steroid, was banned for 2 years. It wasn't an accidental thing, and regardless of the fact that he was at a low point in his career, it is pretty unacceptable that a country like France or a franchise as esteemed as Racing can accept this guy with open arms, and particularly somebody like a province like Munster can open their arms to this guy.
If he served his ban, then surely he's... if they're the rules of World Rugby, it's not Grobler's fault that if a ban is in place and he served it, then surely he's allowed to come back.
But in terms of the history, it was a deliberate thing. It was an effort he made to go out there and dope himself with anabolic steroids. It was serious stuff, Gavin. It just seems very strange to me that a province as esteemed as Munster that pride themselves on tradition so much, and it's not too dissimilar to Racing in fairness, that they pride themselves on qualities like that, would let this thing slip as easily as they did. It's not like it's a guy from within their own ranks. They actively went out and pursued a new target who was a doper.
Well, that's an issue for Racing. I think it's Munster. But when Munster signed him, he'd already served his. As you say, Racing signed him, I think, when he was still suspended, still serving his ban. So that's questionable whether they should have perhaps waited a little bit. But I think it's unfair to criticise Grobler. It's a big issue, and I understand why a lot of people are very upset about it. But if World Rugby, people have talked in the past in the athletics of lifetime bans. Well, that's something. If World Rugby introduced that, then that's I think a lot of people wouldn't have a problem with that, because it is obviously steroid taking is a problem in the game. But from a Munster point of view, I don't think they've done anything wrong.
Gavin, thanks million for joining us.
Thanks very much indeed. Thanks
a lot. Gavin Mortimer there, rugby writer based in France. I think the point about the player himself is probably fair enough in terms of he's legitimately would say that I made a mistake and I have served out my ban and should be given another opportunity. He's totally entitled to say that. It's obviously...
Given the opportunity is a very different story.
I would feel pretty uncomfortable if I was leading things at Munster in employing somebody in that regard, I have to say, but there we go.
Absolutely interesting stuff.
Paul's been a touch on the whole Dan Carter issue. Mad but true, saying that Dan Carter's a weak point in that Racing 15. Uninterested, he said. Seems to have retired 12 months ago.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see Keighley versus Carter on Sunday. That's weirdly a matchup that is very, very appealing now. You wouldn't have said that 12 months ago if you said a fit Dan Carter versus Ian Keighley, but such is the respective graphs of both of their careers that suddenly you're looking at that as like, wow, these guys are on an even footing. Keighley is on the way up, and time to take down one of the legends.
Yeah. I don't know. He's not disinterested anyway. I don't think you could say that about Dan Carter. I don't think.
I think to say he's disinterested is unfair.
Injuries,
obviously, and he's late in his career. It was natural.
At Paul O'Mahony 5 on Twitter says, "What are you on about? Let me guess. You think it should be a lifetime ban?" I think for that level of doping, it probably should be.
Yeah, probably, but that's not exactly the point I was trying to make there, just in terms of Gavin and his knowledge of Racing as a rugby franchise. I'm not even sure if franchise is the right term to use there, but anyway, that we were very quick to criticise Munster this week, and I think that criticism is completely fair because of the qualities that Munster deem that their whole thing is founded on. Like, what are the qualities of Racing? Why are they going after this guy as well? Why did they go after this guy? I'm not sure. That's what I was trying to establish here. The lifetime ban thing is a different discussion. Probably agree with you. Probably
because
should be.
Like, taking that sort of stuff, it does have an impact on you throughout your career afterwards. Like, it's not as if he's not still physically feeling the benefits of it. He is. That's what happens. That's
what they say. I'm no scientist, but I think it's clear from all the reading we can do.
Thanks for that clarification. By the way, we weren't sure. So
I just took off my lab coat before I came in this morning.
Right, it's that time of the week that everybody's waiting for at 9:05 on this Friday morning. It's the return of the BarryOmeter. So it's a reverse order, take 5 through to 1. And this week, put a bit of a twist on things. It's the 5 things across social media that have tweaked my interest over the last 7 days. So fresh in at number 5 on the BarryOmeter this week is Cillian Sheridan, the former Celtic player who's had his say on VAR. He said he's trying to wrap his head around a Sky Sports pundit, Jamie Redknapp, saying that VAR undermines the referee, when every week they have a referee in studio saying that they made mistakes or not. And it's a point that I can certainly have some sympathy with, I have to say. I really don't believe that the idea of introducing VAR undermines the referee. I think it's almost the exact opposite. It's like saying that hair gel undermines slick looking hair. I just don't buy it. I think that it complements it in a very flashy, nice way. In at number 4 on the BarryOmeter this week, Conor McGregor's been in town this week. He was in town in the convention centre at the Pendulum Summit to pick up some sort of an award or other. I'm not quite sure what it was, but he really put his head above the parapet. He went out on a proper limb. Did the MMA fighter. He said that Richard Branson shouldn't, when he's on these shores, be referred to as Sir Richard Branson. But I would say, who really gives a shit whether he's referred to as Lord Haw-Haw, will be my main take on Sir Richard Branson. Whatever the Queen decides to do, that's what she's going to do. But my favourite part of this entire story was the Mirror Sport tweet, followed by the initial response to it that you can see at the bottom there from Benji Dixon. Hats off to you, who says, actually hard to work out who the bigger knobhead is. In at number 3, I'll leave that you can make your own mind up on that one. In at number 3 in the BarryOmeter this week is Neville Southall, because we should really always include something from Neville Southall every week. It's simple and it's basic, but I'm having it all the way. And thanks, Neville, for coming up with that beauty this week. In at number 2 this week is an exchange on Instagram, this time between Jamie Carragher and Phil Neville. It all got a little bit saucy, it has to be said, when Jamie dropped around to the Liverpool training ground in Melwood to meet the brand new signing. And he's a big guy. It turns out it's Virgil van Dijk. Phil's response was fairly tame, it has to be said, to the initial posting of that photograph. Phil's response is pretty tame. You live at Liverpool's training ground. It's football banter, it's tame stuff, tends to be what goes on. Before he goes right over the top of the ball, does Jamie Carragher, studs showing, career-ending leg breaker on poor old Phil Neville. In at number 1 on the BarryOmeter this week, it's to rugby we go, and it's to Twitter we go, and it's to Fergus McFadden's tip of the cap to his injured teammate, Dave Kearney, who was sitting on the bench for their game against Ulster in the Pro 14 over the weekend, and he had it was cold, right? That's the sort of premise here. But there was some pretty sexy rugby at play, and just take a look here at Dave Kearney getting himself right in the mood for this sexy rugby. I think we can take a look at that now. Quick, you can pace and play the second half. We needed to achieve the second half. Dave Kearney getting all the love from Fergus McFadden following that one. Just in case you missed it, we'll rerun the fun for you. Quick, there we go. Pace and play the second half. We needed to achieve the second half. Listen, it can be very, very cold at the RDS, or maybe the rugby was just a little bit too sexy. That's the BarryOmeter this week. It'll be back next week, maybe. We're not 100% sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a good one this week, yeah.
You mean they're not great every week? Is that the inference there? I mean, I think it's a fair enough point, but...
Yeah, it's... I need to stop fapping around and get a move on with the next week's BarryOmeter, I think, and let's do it better again.
Do a better one, that's fair enough. Clodagh Fleming, congratulations to you. You are the winner of the pair of tickets to go along and see Leinster and Glasgow this weekend. It's a game you'll also be able to hear live on Off the Ball on News Talk. I think that's pretty much it. We have a comment of the day, by the way, that we should bring in before we leave. Patrick Conway was in touch earlier on. It was about the Racing Post story that we mentioned at the top of the show. Clonmel drama as fog causes horse to be left at the start. The starter thought he'd counted all the horses who'd made their way to the start line, but missed out on one. And Patrick Conway's been in touch on. He says, how was that horse missed? I haven't the foggiest.
That is ideal content for next week's barometer.
I haven't the foggiest.
Perfectly in the genre.
I mean, I think that's a beautiful thing. Also, a few more comments that we'll bring before we leave you on the Martin O'Neill situation. Darragh O'Toole says, no proper youth setup in Ireland is a significant difference between us and Iceland. That was apropos of a previous question we'd in. Love the Wolverine Bluetooth headphones, Kev. Does that mean something to you?
Well, they were blue headphones, weren't they?
Right.
They were did he look a bit like Wolverine as a result of that?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Possibly. Somebody else was complimenting him on his...
Bluetooth. I think is what the pun is there,
right,
Adrian.
Okay, that's been a long old morning.
The foggiest and missed one was a little bit easier.
It just took its toll on us, I think. Jack Oatkin says, I don't feel Martin O'Neill is really that bothered whether he gets the Stoke job or not. He's just letting the FAI and football in general know that he's available. I think he's fairly heavily in the running for the Stoke position. Wesley Ryan says, bring in the Bull McCabe and the Bird for O'Neill and Keane.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
That might work.
Let's just do that and forget everything else.
Did you watch the field it was on?
It was on over Christmas.
Did you watch it?
I didn't watch it this Christmas, but I've watched it plenty of times.
I hadn't seen it for years and just thought, geez, I'm going to sit down now and have a look at this.
And
it was less funny than I remember. And actually, when it was over, your expression says it all, was left wondering why I ever thought it was funny to begin with. It's pretty dark.
It is. It's not a comedy.
Very dark.
It's, I don't know why you would have thought that.
I don't know.
We think of a different field.
The passing of time had sort of left me with a different impression of the field than when I initially watched it.
Getting the
there
field.
are humorous parts in it, but it's by and large pretty black.
It is. It's a dark film. I thought you might have been getting the field mixed up with the room, maybe, and you thought that could have been
that wasn't what happened.
The humour.
It's just gone over 9:10 on. Thanks a million.
Thank you.
Enjoy that. That's it for this week's OTB AM. Owen and Jerry are going to be back on your screens on Monday morning, and lots of good stuff to come on Off the Ball and News Talk over the weekend, as well as on Premier League Live on Today FM. And don't forget now, that's what I call Sport on 98 FM. But from us for this morning, good morning.